welcome to the Adoption Lounge. I'm Amanda.
And I'm Katie. Thank you so much for joining us again. Amanda, how was your week?
It was good. So I had a really cool moment with Mason, which is my 13-year-old. He had homecoming. He plays football. So it was their homecoming, and they got to do like the run out in the tunnel with the mist. And
sure.
Yeah. It was
very exciting.
So exciting. And he was like, "This is Mason Ken." And he comes out and he had a rose and he handed it to me. I kid you not. I felt like I was like gonna cry because I was like, my baby boy, before he gets tackled, he hands me this flower. I still have it. It's alive and going well, guys. And it's been
just like
days.
Your love.
Just like my love.
I think
How was yours?
Well, I think I still have my homecoming dress.
Do you really?
It's so wild that you have a child that is old enough to be going to homecoming.
That is wild that you still have that. I need to see it.
Oh, my mom has like every dress ever selected.
I love that.
We used to do fashion shows, so she would go and buy basically all the dresses that she could find at Nordstrom, Charlotte Russe or like whatever. And then she'd bring them all home, and there would be like 20 dresses, and we would rank them. And then we would do a fashion show. And my sister and my mom would be my critics. And, of course, we would narrow it down, do final catwalks, and then make a final decision.
I love that, and I kind of want to do that.
We should do that.
Yeah.
We should definitely do that in the future for something. Maybe, like, if we get to go to another gala or something.
Yes. It's so fun to get to dress up like that. I wish there was more things as adults where we got to, like, dress up and just... Because you don't. Typically,
Yeah, I know. Also, I have a foster puppy right now, so she is available for adoption through
She's adorable.
Mobile Mutts. Yeah, she is. Fauna's a shepherd lab mix, and she's been a lot of fun. It's always fun to have a foster puppy around. I'm pretty exhausted.
She's just a fluffy, like...
She's a little munchkin.
It's so, like, you can tell she's shepherd, but, like, that she's also mixed with something, but she is beautiful.
Yeah, and I just love fostering. I think it's so much fun, and it's obviously hard and sad to say goodbye when they get adopted, but I just got an application for this morning that I'm feeling good about. So I'm just excited to get to see her go live her life with her forever family. So we're really happy. So what are we talking about today?
So today we got a lot of questions about wanting us to talk about the teen mom, Catelynn and Tyler kind of drama that's out there right now with their adoption. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that from an adoptee's perspective, because we have our lovely adoptee, Katie.
Well, the best part of the story is I know nothing. I feel like the only person in the world who has not followed the story at all. I did not watch the show when it came out, and nothing against it. I just never watched it. I was not really that into reality TV, and even though I've come a long way. But even though it was a little bit relevant because I was adopted, Amanda is going to tell me the story today. Yes. We're going to recap it for you and then ask me some questions.
Yeah. So for any of you out there that are watching this that also don't know kind of the story. So it started with 16 and Pregnant. It was a show following people that were in high school that had gotten pregnant. And Catelynn and Tyler were one of the couples that they had followed. And this was back in 2008, 2009. So they were actually one of the only couples to pursue adoption. And I think it was so neat because there wasn't a lot out there that was about adoption that was real, right? Okay. You had adoption take place in movies, but like never got to really see one happen. So people got to follow along with them and they loved them. And they ended up placing their child with Brandon and Teresa, who are the adoptive parents. And they, I believe, only have Carly now. Carly's 15 years old.
So Carly is Catelynn and Tyler's baby that they had. Okay.
Their daughter that they placed with Brandon and Teresa. And obviously 16 and Pregnant took off, and Catelynn and Tyler were one of the couples that they followed. So then it turned into Teen Mom. And we've been following along with them since 2009. Well, I have. Katie has not.
I feel like the rest of the world is with you.
Yes. We've been following along with them. They've stayed together. They now have a family, of their own. And they've had an open adoption for 15 years now. And just recently, that open adoption has changed.
Okay.
And Brandon and Teresa really expressed that they wanted to keep Carly and their lives in general out of the, the spotlight.
So Catelynn and Tyler are still kind of public figures. They're still
Catelynn and Tyler are still on
TV?
TV,
Okay.
super popular, and well, to some.
Allegedly. Just kidding.
And they went public with this. They went public with obviously how they're feeling about not having, the open adoption anymore with Carly. And Carly has grown a relationship with obviously her other brothers and sisters that Catelynn and Tyler have had. So
Yeah.
it's an emotional time, and they went to social media with it.
Okay.
And so that's kind of how everyone knows about this story right now. So yeah, we're going to talk a little bit about it and just get your perspective. One of the questions that I know that I have is how you would feel had your adoption journey been shared on national TV as a child. What do you think?
Oh gosh. Well, the interesting part about that is if you grow up a certain way, just like growing up being adopted, having two dads, anything about you, it feels normal if that's what you're used to from birth. So, I mean, I can imagine that Carly probably doesn't know any other way for it to be.
Right.
I can't imagine that it would be fun having everybody that I go to school with know about what's going on in my life, though. That feels invasive, I think. It kind of takes away a little bit of autonomy and ownership over your own story.
Mm-hmm.
I was very open about being adopted growing up. I would tell anyone really. I used to be, it was like a thing, when someone was like getting to be good friends with me, I'd be like, just so you know, I'm adopted. So they would know that I was like, we're really close, and I wanted them to know this important thing about me.
Of course.
But my sister's very private about it. So I think she would have hated something like that. I don't know.
Well, because it takes the choice away, I guess, from being able to tell people when you want to tell them, how you want to tell them.
Exactly.
It's something that everyone already knows about you.
Exactly. And she's not an adult yet, so this is probably a choice now that she'll never get to make.
Right.
Really.
Right.
But in general, with the whole world knowing, I mean, that includes teachers, that includes future companies that she might work for. It's very possible that people will know who she is as a, public figure. And I think that's, I don't know. I don't love that.
Well, and how would you feel if you had a relationship and then because your parents did want to keep you and protect you from, because I get it, growing up as a teenager in the public eye is difficult. It's hard enough, right? Being a teenager
And
right
with
now.
social media these days, it's
exactly
wild.
And so had your parents made the decision to maybe pull back on those visits that you were used to having with your birth mom, how do you think that you would feel?
Well, I think that's the tricky part, because I feel like there's two layers of this. So even though it's really hard to have your life kind of in the public spotlight, at the same time, so I love that Catelynn and Tyler wanted to bring attention to teen pregnancy and to choosing adoption, because I think that's an important thing that you should shed light on. I mean, I am very open on social media about having a son with Down syndrome, and maybe I'm doing the same thing to him in some ways. So what are the benefits of that? Because you're really saying, hey, this is great for the rest of the world. Does that outweigh what's best for my individual child and their life and their experience? So, I don't want to sound like I'm really being negative about that, because I do kind of love aspects of that. And at the same time, too, with Carly growing up knowing who they are and knowing their other children, it feels a little cruel to sever relationships like that. I feel like if the adoptive parents, which I completely understand, are concerned about the exposure, there might be compromising ways to do visitation still or hang out without it being publicized. But maybe not. I mean, do you mind me asking, what was their original agreement? Do you know?
So the original agreement was a kind of baseline open adoption. They agreed to meet once a year with Brandon and Teresa, Carly, Catelynn, and Tyler. Mm-hmm. And they also had agreed to texting kind of back and forth.
Okay, so similar to what we tell our
Similar,
families.
kind of just that baseline.
Yeah.
One thing that I think is important to kind of emphasize is that this is all taking place when Carly's 15. So she is old enough to probably have a conversation. I don't know.
And an opinion?
Yes. So I don't know if Brandon and Teresa, being her parents, sat down as a family and discussed if this might be better. I think it might have been nice if they would have let Catelynn and Tyler know, which from what I know, we have obviously no part in their adoption journey, but from what I've seen, it looks as though Catelynn and Tyler were kept in the dark and they were just kind of blocked all of a sudden without any conversation. So I think that's what people are having a hard time with. But they could have had a conversation with Carly. Maybe this is what Carly wanted.
Sure. Well,
we don't know.
That's really challenging. And at the same time, I can understand them being, because I think Catelynn and Tyler deserve this information, but at the same time, the adoptive parents, they could be very concerned that every single thing that they say will then be publicized.
That's true.
Which I could understand the fear of that as well. They don't feel like it's a safe space to communicate anymore.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, it's funny because I remember looking back at this, and when they're open adoption, now it's been so different. We have email and there's texting and all this. Yeah. But they used to have to actually go and give their social worker handwritten letters to give to Brandon and Teresa and Carly, and then vice versa.
That's exactly how mine was back then. They had to mail them to the agency who would go through them to make sure there was nothing in there where we were being too identifying, or my birth mom was not being too identifying, and then they would pass them along.
It's just so funny, though, that so many people are interested in this because you've really gotten to watch Carly and Tyler kind of grow up. They were only kids when they did this, and when their parents were not supportive of them placing Carly for adoption, so they actually had to go outside of the hospital to actually do the
Was the hospital
handover.
Not supportive either?
They weren't allowed to because they didn't have to let the adoption take place at the hospital because they didn't have the consent from the parents.
Got it.
So, and they were underage. But we've really gotten to watch them grow up. So I think a lot of people are so invested in watching this open adoption evolve and this journey evolve. And
well, it's positive. It's bringing positive light to open adoption, which is always a very good thing. And in all fairness, too, Teresa and Brandon knew they were signing up for this in some ways. I mean, they had to know that, was it MTV it was originally on, was following them for the 16 and Pregnant show, right?
Yeah, and that's interesting, too, because 16 and Pregnant was only supposed to be kind of like the special. They had...
Oh, it wasn't initially
It was never going to be a series. It was more just, we're going to follow each person's journey, right? It wasn't really like a full-on show. So it was like Catelynn and Tyler did their segment, followed their journey, and then they moved on to the next person that they were following.
And it wasn't about adoption because you said they were the only ones that chose adoption.
It was not just
more
about
so
adoption.
about following teenagers who had gotten pregnant.
Navigating their unplanned pregnancies. Yep. And they were the only ones that did adoption. I think the only ones that ever even really looked into it as far as watching the show. And so when it took off and it went to Teen Mom, and now it is a series where they follow certain ones.
It was obviously very successful.
It was very successful, and I don't think anyone knew. I don't think Catelynn and Tyler knew. I don't think
it didn't seem like it was going to blow up to where it is now.
And they did at one point, I remember on the show, Brandon and Teresa did express, this was years ago, that they kind of wanted to keep things a little bit more private.
Yeah.
And so they did agree, because they had recorded... on Teen Mom, they'd recorded one of their visits, keeping Carly private, blurred out.
Yeah, which is absolutely how it should be.
Yes, and they didn't want to continue with that. And Catelynn and Tyler were very respectful. They talked about Carly a little bit less, even though it's a big part of their journey. It's who they are, right? So it's hard not to talk about that.
Kind of built your life around that if it started when you were just a teenager, too.
Absolutely. And this is the way that they're providing for their family now. So... they respected Brandon and Teresa and kept that part private. And then a couple years later, now we're here. And so how do you think the public nature would have, kind of understanding Carly's journey, how would that affect her journey? How she viewed...
her ability to, develop a relationship with
just,
her birth parents,
being very public and how do you think that kind of altered how she viewed her adoption journey? Because you have a viewpoint on yours.
Yeah.
How do you think it would have had any effect on her and how she viewed her adoption journey?
I don't know. I mean, I think if you're used to having the cameras there, maybe not. I just don't know. I feel like sometimes even if you're used to something that you're still a different person, sometimes when you feel like you have to be on, and it might be a great relief when the cameras are not around. Do they get time without the cameras being there? I understand this is probably, it sounds like their livelihood, But at the same time, you want to make sure that you're showing Carly that you want to spend time with her outside of this too. Because that's the only thing that she's, like, her only perspective is having cameras in her life. So I feel like there needs to be a kind of behind the scenes effort. So hopefully that's happening as well. And if Teresa and Brandon are open to that, like, you know, if I were Carly, that would really bother me. But like you said, I think it's a really good point for you to say that we don't know if they've had this conversation with Carly and what her opinion is. And I feel like her opinion is really the only one that matters at this point. So, I mean, and I'm not saying she should speak out. I'm just saying.
No, but especially with her age. And I know, so Catelynn and Tyler had, when they were going public with this, they had shown that they had been texting just updates like they had typically done in the past. And it was apparent that they were then blocked. They were like ignored, and then blocked. And so...
Oh, they full on blocked them? Like, so they wouldn't respond to their messages and then just blocked them?
Yeah, it turned green. And you iPhone users out there know what that means. And that
Don't
means
worry, I'm not a droid. You know that.
That is blocked.
It affect our friendship.
So I think, from my point of view, just like, I know we talked about this with Lindsay too, like how she still reaches out. I know this is the reverse, it's the birth mom wanting to, birth parents wanting to keep the relationship going. All you can do is keep sending those messages, because one day if Carly does choose to reach out, if this wasn't a decision that she wanted or made, or she decides later on that she would like to resume communication with you, you can show that you always tried.
Yes, I always say that too.
And that's not to villainize Brandon and Teresa. I mean, everyone in this situation is doing what they feel is best for Carly, you would hope, right? And so whatever decision that is right now doesn't mean that it's final. And Carly is 15. She has formed relationships. And if she wants to continue those, they're open to it. And they can prove that they always had that door open on their end.
Sure.
So I think that's always really important too. But
it is very rough, though, not to respond at all or give any information.
Well, you're left in the dark not knowing why. I'm sure as parents, my thing is, I would be like, as a mom, I would wonder, was this something Carly wanted? Did I do or say something that ever made Carly feel uncomfortable, that made her then not want to continue having a relationship with me? Or did I do something to offend Brandon and Teresa? I know it looked as though they really respected Brandon and Teresa. They kind of grew up with them. I mean, they were only 16 when this all happened, Brandon and Teresa.
Just babies themselves.
Yeah, and so I think that is also hard, is not having any context and letting your mind run wild on why this is happening.
Yeah.
And and if it's Brandon and Teresa and it wasn't Carly's decision, how is it being explained to Carly when she has questions on why am I not getting to see?
Sure.
How is that being explained, and you not being able to be a part of that narrative, I think would be really difficult.
What's the general public consensus about them feeling frustrated with their open adoption and then choosing to go public on social media? I mean,
from what I've seen, it's been pretty team Catelynn, Tyler.
Yeah.
Again, people are invested in them. They're not as invested in Brandon and Teresa.
That's a good point. They feel like they know them better.
Right now, they're only getting one side of the story. Again, we don't know how Carly or Brandon and Teresa are feeling, what led to this. Mm-hmm. So I think right now, with what people have, the information that they have, everyone's kind of team Catelynn and Tyler. And I think surprisingly, well, not surprisingly, I guess, but I think it's really great to see how many people are worried about Carly. Like, their mind's in the right place of...
That's good.
Obviously, they feel bad for Catelynn and Tyler.
Yeah.
And I'm sure they have empathy for Brandon and Teresa, that they're just doing the best they can as parents. We all know that it's hard. Everyone has questions, though, about, I wonder how Carly's feeling. Is this something Carly wanted? How is Carly going to feel?
Yeah.
Especially because Brandon and Teresa are the only parents that she's known. So if this wasn't a decision that Carly made with them, is she going to end up resenting them? And that's a really sad place to be.
I can't imagine that that's what's happening, because she must hear about all this noise.
You would think, because so many people are on TikTok, right? And so I'm sure friends, which I wonder if that's really hard too, because...
That's what I was thinking.
Can you imagine having people think one thing about your parents or about your biological parents forming an opinion that you haven't been a part of and having that kind
the
of...
whole world has an opinion on a situation that it directly affects you. It's just very bizarre.
And also being 15 and feeling like you don't really have a voice. You don't want to go out there and put yourself out there more and be like, no, let me set the record straight, you know?
Like, that should just not be a position we put any 15-year-old in the first place. And it's hard. I sympathize too with Catelynn and Tyler. I don't know how I feel about them going public, but they've always been public figures, so I understand that's kind of the forum they're used to. And they don't have any legal ground to stand on. So it's not like they could be privately taking them to court over updates, communication. That's just not a thing. So
they probably wouldn't have gone public too had they had more of an answer on why I think this is their way to kind of vent. A lot of people go, and I think people have questions too. I have seen before, they're like, we haven't heard or seen any updates about Carly.
Yeah, what's going on?
So what's going on? And I think when you are so emotional and you don't have any answers, you're like, I'm right there with you. I'm also wondering how, and can you imagine being
as your follower?
Right.
Your invested follower.
Right. And I would think that Catelynn and Tyler they just want to know how Carly's doing. And I think it's hard too for them because they don't know how to answer questions that their daughters have.
Sure.
About it, who have really grown to have a relationship with their sister.
Sure. That's another silent voice in a lot of ways in this process. That's rough. That's a complicated situation to be out there.
Yeah.
For everybody to dissect. But I understand why everyone's kind of riveted and has questions.
Well, yeah. Everyone wants to know.
Well, I mean, I have no strong opinion one way or the other. I think that there's not enough information, and I would hope everyone would give Carly some space and let her.
I think just respecting everybody and knowing that everyone, I mean, Brendan and Teresa, from what we've all know and seen online, they love Carly. And Catelynn and Tyler love Carly. They've documented a lot of their struggle with they've stayed together and they've built a really beautiful life, and just wondering what that life would be like had they kept Carly. I mean, they were really young when they made this decision, and so everyone loves Carly in this situation. So you emphasize with the fact that, like, hey, everyone's just doing the best they can, and we know as parents that's all you can do. So I don't really have an opinion one way or the other either, because I'm not in the situation, so I can't say what I would do or how I would react. Had I had a platform like Catelynn and Tyler, would I go public with it to bring some awareness? Because you almost feel like you have a
responsibility. Yeah,
like a responsibility that, like, hey, this is, because everyone's been following along and been so invested. But also, is that what's best for Carly?
Yeah, the individual, like the overall is one thing, and then the individual players is a completely different thing.
Yes.
Two very divergent situations.
Well, and you brought up a good point. We don't know all the information. Nobody does.
Exactly.
There's
People
always
get very heated.
Yes.
And you just have to wonder, I see my parents, well, I did when I was 15 every single day. They see Carly every single day, and they might know something we don't know. Not about Catelynn and Tyler, but about how Carly maybe is feeling in her current situation and maybe wanting some space. And that's also, in my opinion, her prerogative.
Well, and
but I feel for them. I feel for Catelynn and Tyler. I feel for her half siblings, or her. I guess they're her full siblings.
Right. That's hard. we weren't a part of the decision, and that Brendan and Teresa were, so we don't know. Like we'd mentioned earlier, maybe they had a conversation with Carly. Maybe this is at the hands of Carly wanting it, and maybe it's not. And only time will tell. And all you hope for is that everybody is just happy, healthy, and adjusts well to this, and as that people move forward. I know it's difficult.
Grow out of this, hopefully, and come out of it. Yeah.
Now that emotions have settled, it's been some time, but people have opinions, and people want to know. People want to know what we think, Katie.
Are they still on TV? Is the show?
They are. I don't know that Teen Mom is still. I think Teen Mom. Teen Mom is on, but they also do like reunions too. So I don't know if it's as active on. I haven't been following along religiously, in the last couple of years, but they're
This is like
They're
Jersey
still
Shore.
on.
I've also never seen a single episode of Jersey Shore.
Like the whole world. Katie does not like
I don't watch Real Housewives either. I know.
didn't-
I'm sorry.
It's a sore spot for me. I love Real Housewives.
I only watch Below Deck. Below Deck is the best.
So she didn't really like reality TV, but I'm starting to get her into it. I feel like
Yeah.
little by little.
I don't know. I watch Love is Blind. There's a new season out on Netflix.
There is. There was we watched the Love is Blind UK, and there was somebody who.
Yes, and he had a brother with Down syndrome, so I was very excited. And then the person he actually proposed to was adopted.
Yeah.
I know.
I love
really
that people are talking about it, and
I got really excited. I texted everybody. I was like, we all need to watch Love is Blind UK. They have Down syndrome, they have adoption, they have everything.
Yes, and she also
Everything
wants.
you could ever want.
She also wants to adapt some of their language, like Bev.
Oh, yes, I think we should also work in
Yeah.
UK phrases.
Why not?
I know, you look so Bev today.
Thanks. So do you.
I don't know if it sounds as cool with our Chicago accent.
It does. I feel like it does.
If you say so. We're going to keep trying, though. We won't give up.
Yeah, this one's a fun one. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope we answered some questions that maybe people had, and it's great to get your perspective, Katie, as always.
Thanks. Well, I would love to hear everybody else's perspective. So comments, opinions.
Yeah, let us know.
Let me know.
Let us know.
All right. Thanks.
Bye,
Bye.
guys.
Oh.